It seems like every time you go online to configure a new laptop or you walk into a store to upgrade your phone, the price tag has magically jumped another $100.
Oh, absolutely.
You look at the receipt and you start wondering, is this just standard inflation? Is it corporate greed? Or is there something fundamentally broken in the hidden background of the technology you rely on every single day?
Yeah, it is a profound shift and something you feel in your wallet long before you read about it in the financial pages. There's a very real, very painful squeeze happening right now at the consumer level. And honestly, it has nothing to do with the brand logo on the back of your device.
Right. And today, the mission of this deep dive is to map out exactly why you are paying that invisible tax. We are tracking what industry insiders have dubbed the AI-driven memory supercycle.
It's a massive cycle.
It really is. We're going to explore how this massive market shift has suddenly dethroned Apple as the undisputed king of the global supply chain. And we're looking at a highly controversial Chinese tech company that has somehow forced the world's most valuable brand into a corner, basically leaving them scrambling for parts.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we are witnessing right now is a complete rewiring of global tech power dynamics.
For years, the consumer electronics market hummed along on a very predictable rhythm.
Yeah, totally predictable.
But that rhythm has been entirely shattered by the explosive, almost violent rise of artificial intelligence infrastructure.
We have a huge stack of sources to go through today to make sense of this. We're pulling from industry reports from Tech Insights and Semi-Analysis, market data from Jefferies and Big O Finance.
The Big O data is wild.
It is. We also have tech supply chain reporting from Channel News, Chosen Elbow, WCT Tech, and this is the crazy part, an actual official warning letter from the United States Senate sent directly to Apple CEO Tim Cook.
Yeah, that letter's a huge piece of the puzzle. Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start at the root cause of this massive industry shift. AI has an absolutely insatiable appetite for memory. It is devouring global supply and upending the market that you interact with every day.
Devouring is the right word.
Think about it like this. For over a decade, Apple was the biggest VIP at the club. They walked in, they dictated the music, they demanded the absolute best tables, and they set the prices for everyone in the room.
Right. They had total control.
Exactly. But suddenly, a group of new billionaires, these massive AI companies like OpenAI, Meta, Microsoft, building giant data centers, they walked in, threw billions of dollars on the bar, bought out all the premium inventory, and just left Apple standing out in the cold, waiting in line.
And those AI companies aren't just buying a few extra drinks. They're draining the entire city's supply. The companies building this AI infrastructure are spending unprecedented sums on advanced chips and the specialized memory required to run them.
Because the AI models need so much data, right?
Exactly. Because AI models require pulling massive data sets all at once to train their algorithms, the memory component, like the ability to hold and move that data rapidly, has become the ultimate bottleneck.
I was looking at the transaction tracking data from Big O Finance, and the numbers they recorded don't even look real. We aren't talking about a 5 or 10% markup here.
Not at all. If you look at the raw data Big O captured, the fixed transaction prices for DDR5 memory, which is your standard high-performance memory, skyrocketed by 515%.
515%.
Yeah, it went from about $3.90 a chip to $24. And it actually gets worse for pure storage.
Oh, wow.
The standard NAND memory used to store your files, that surged 786%, pushing past $30.
That is insane. And when you cross-reference that with industry analysis from Brioshin, they characterize this era from 2025 to 2027 as a period of deliberate scarcity.
Deliberate scarcity, exactly. The manufacturers are essentially starving the traditional market on purpose because the AI market is just so lucrative right now.
And you can see the direct impact of this bleeding into your everyday life. According to Channel News, Apple recently hiked prices across its Mac and iPad lines by anywhere from $100 to $500. The base 13-inch MacBook Air jumped from $1099 to $1299 basically overnight.
And it's hitting the phones, too.
Yeah, WCF Tech picked up on a report from the hardware teardown teams at Tech Insights. They estimate that just the memory inside the base model of the upcoming iPhone 18 could cost Apple $86 more to produce than the current generation.
Which is a massive hit to Apple's famously strong profit margins.
Huge. WCCF Tech noted it actually caused a 6% drop in Apple's stock the moment those projections hit the market.
Well, the structural problem here, and the reason those prices aren't coming down anytime soon, comes down to how the supply is contracted. Market analysts at Jefferies found that right now, 50% of the total global memory capacity is already locked up.
Locked up in multi-year deals by the cloud service providers, right? The hyperscalers running these AI servers.
Exactly. And Jeffries predicts that lockup is on track to hit 70%. Just think about the math on that.
If 70% of all the memory manufactured on Earth is being shipped directly to AI data centers,
Then the companies making your laptops, your tablets, and your smartwatches are left in a brutal cage match fighting over the remaining 30%.
which brings us to Apple's desperation play. Because their traditional, historically reliable suppliers like Samsung and SK Hynix are prioritizing these highly profitable AI servers, Apple is being forced to look for alternative lifelines just to keep the iPhone assembly lines running.
They need parts, plain and simple.
Right. And that search has led them to a very surprising source, a Chinese company called Changzhen Memory Technologies, or CXMT.
It is a massive pivot. I mean, a few years ago, the idea of Apple relying on a relatively new Chinese fab for premium smartphone memory would have been unthinkable.
But I have to push back here for a second. Wait, isn't the whole point of going to Chinese suppliers to get a massive discount?
You would think so.
Yeah, I always thought made in China in this context meant a race to the bottom on price. If Apple is getting squeezed so badly on their margins, shouldn't buying Chinese memory solve their financial problem?
What's fascinating here is that the narrative of cheap Chinese memory is a complete myth in today's landscape. The current supply chain reporting completely debunks that old assumption.
Really?
Yeah. CXMT is currently trading at similar and in some specific categories even higher prices than the legacy giants like Micron, Samsung, and SK Hynix.
There was this incredible detail published by the Chosun Ilbo regarding this exact dynamic. I mean, Apple is a company that has literally been dubbed the master of supply chain management.
Oh, they are ruthless.
Their standard playbook is to walk into a supplier's office, dangle the promise of hundreds of millions of iPhone orders, and demand brutal price cuts. So Apple went to CXMT and tried the same tactic.
And CXMT flat out rejected them.
They just said no.
The reporting noted that Apple effectively lost face in this negotiation. The entire global market structure has shifted so violently that Apple's historic leverage has just evaporated.
CXMT knows exactly how desperate Apple is.
Exactly. The only real advantage CXMT is offering Apple right now isn't a discount. It is the simple, undeniable fact that they actually have chips sitting in a warehouse ready to ship.
But here's where it gets really interesting, though, because Apple deciding to pay top dollar to a Chinese supplier isn't just a quirky business transaction. It immediately triggered a massive geopolitical landmine in Washington.
Oh yeah, it became a huge issue.
Like, how does a simple corporate scramble for phone parts mutate into a full-blown national security incident?
Well, before we dive into the specific friction between Apple and Washington, it is crucial to state that as we look at these documents, our goal today isn't to take a political stance or point fingers.
Of course.
We are simply reading the tea leaves of these reports and government letters to show you how a standard commercial supply bottleneck has collided head-on with international security policies. We aren't endorsing any specific political viewpoint here.
Exactly. So let's look at that collision. Behind the scenes, Apple is actively lobbying the U.S. Commerce Department to ensure that CXMT is not placed on the restrictive entity list.
Because if CXMT goes on that list, Apple would be legally required to get special government licenses to buy from them.
Which would essentially kill the deal. Now, currently, CXMT is on the Pentagon's 1260H military blacklist.
That sounds scary.
It does. That list carries a ton of reputational risk, basically flagging the company as a concern, but it doesn't legally ban private commercial trade.
But the very act of Apple lobbying to protect this supply chain caught the attention of lawmakers, and it resulted in a very direct, bipartisan warning shot across Apple's bow.
We're looking at a letter dated July 2026, sent directly to Tim Cook from a group of U.S. senators, including Charles Schumer, Mike Crapo, and Jeanne Shaheen.
The senators lay out a core argument in this letter.
Yeah, they claim CXMT is heavily subsidized by the Chinese state, with the specific intent of driving trusted Western producers out of business by dumping massive capacity onto the market.
And they also bring up a major legal hurdle, the 2023 National Defense Authorization Act.
Right.
This act legally bans federal agencies from using any products containing CXMT chips by December 2027.
So if Apple puts these specific memory chips into a new iPhone, the U.S. government eventually wouldn't be allowed to buy that iPhone for its own employees.
Precisely. And the senators did not just express vague concerns, they demanded concrete answers by August 21st, 2026.
They gave a hard deadline.
They did. They asked if Apple will commit right now to not using these chips. They demanded to know what specific technical specifications or product roadmaps Apple shared with CXMT during the testing phase.
And perhaps most pointedly, they asked if Apple attempted to secure priority memory supply from U.S. allies before turning to a Chinese firm.
It's the ultimate rock in a hard place. Apple has a severe immediate commercial crisis. They need physical memory to build their products for the holiday cycle.
But Washington views the integration of those specific chips into the global ecosystem as a long-term national security vulnerability.
It perfectly illustrates how intertwined modern technology has become with national sovereignty. I mean, a smartphone isn't just a consumer good anymore. It's a node in a geopolitical network.
So if CXMT is important enough to command full price from a desperate Apple and powerful enough to draw the collective ire of the U.S. Senate, we really need to understand how this company got so big, so incredibly fast.
Their origin story is fascinating.
I was reading a deep dive analysis by Semi-Analysis on their origin story, and it is wild. It's like they built a modern tech empire out of the fossilized bones of a dead European company.
And the DNA they extracted from those bones gave them exactly what they needed. It gave them a legal and technical way to bypass the massive patent fortresses built up by the legacy giants over 4 decades.
Right, so Semi-Analysis outlines that CXMT was founded back in 2016 by an entrepreneur named Zhu Yiming.
Originally under the super secretive name Project 506.
Yeah, Project 506. But you can't just invent world-class DRAM manufacturing from scratch in a garage.
Why not?
The legacy companies like Samsung and Micron had thousands of patents blocking anyone new from entering the market. So CXMT went shopping for ruins.
They found the Commanda legacy.
Exactly. Commanda was a German DRAM maker that went bankrupt in 2009. CXMT swooped in and acquired 2.8 terabytes of their technical documents and roughly 7,000 patents.
And this wasn't just old paperwork, you know. It contained a very specific, vital piece of technology known as the 46-nanometer buried word line architecture.
Okay, what exactly is a buried word line, and why was it the holy grail for them?
Well, to understand it, you have to picture how memory chips are built. Traditional memory chips lay the tiny control wires, the word lines, flat on the surface of the silicon.
Okay, makes sense.
But as we make chips smaller and smaller to fit more data, those surface wires get way too crowded. They start interfering with each other and leaking electrical power.
So it's basically a traffic jam on the surface.
Exactly. What Commanda had developed was a technique to physically dig microscopic trenches into the silicon and bury the control wires inside those trenches.
Oh, wow.
It saves surface space and dramatically reduces electrical leakage. So by acquiring the patents to this specific buried trench technique, CXMT could build foundational memory chips without stepping on the surface-level patents owned by Samsung or Micron.
It was a complete workaround.
A totally legal workaround.
That is brilliant. And they didn't just buy the blueprints, they bought the brains. They recruited Commanda's former vice president, Karl-Heinz Kisters, to help them understand the treasure map they just bought.
And they aggressively poached top engineering talent from Micron, Samsung, and manufacturing hubs in Taiwan.
But even with the blueprints and the engineers, building these microscopic cities of silicon burns through billions of dollars before you ever have a product to sell.
Right, the capital requirements are insane.
And that is where the city of Hefei comes in.
The role of the state cannot be overstated here. The Hefei municipal government provided what the analysts call patient, state-owned venture capital.
Patient is an understatement. The Hefei government tolerated an astonishing 36.65 billion RMB in financial losses for nearly a decade.
That's billions of dollars just burned.
Right. Most Silicon Valley venture capitalists get jittery after 2 bad quarters. Hefei just kept feeding the beast year after year, absorbing billions in losses, until CXMT finally turned its first annual profit in 2025.
And now they're structuring a massive $4.1 billion IPO to capitalize on that decade of extreme patience.
Yeah, but the way this IPO is designed is fascinating. They're utilizing a legal framework called a concerted action agreement. I saw that in the filing.
It's a very specific structure.
The company holds about 30% of the economic rights to the factories, but they somehow maintain over 70% of the voting control. How does that actually work?
Think of a concerted action agreement like a parliamentary coalition. You have a group of minority shareholders who legally bind themselves to vote as a single, unified bloc directed by one lead party.
So in this case, the state-backed entities might only own a fraction of the actual economic shares.
But they've legally required a slew of other investors to hand over their voting proxy.
Wow.
The end result. The public market takes on the financial risk, but the state keeps both hands firmly on the steering wheel, dictating the strategic direction of the fabs.
And it is working flawlessly for them. They are currently projecting an unbelievable $50 billion in revenue for 2026.
It's staggering.
And CXMT isn't a lone wolf in this breakthrough. Tech Insights recently tore down a consumer hard drive, the SKHY 600, and discovered that another Chinese company, YMTC, had quietly achieved the world's highest bit density in 3D NAND storage.
Yeah, they built a 232-layer chip.
Which is an incredible feat of physical engineering.
Oh, totally. To understand 3D NAND, imagine a city that is completely run out of land to build houses. You can't build wider, so you have to build skyscrapers.
Right.
Traditional memory laid out storage cells flat, side by side. Eventually, they hit the physical limit of how small atoms can get. 3D NAND solves this by turning the memory cells vertically, stacking them on top of each other.
So building a 232-layer chip is like...
It's like constructing a 232-story microscopic skyscraper and then drilling microscopic elevator shafts perfectly straight down through all 232 floors so the data can travel. It requires breathtaking precision.
So what does this all mean? With China rising so fast, hitting these incredible technical milestones and projecting tens of billions in revenue, it looks like the traditional tech giants are just getting steamrolled.
It does look like that on the surface.
Are legacy companies like Samsung and SK Hynix essentially closing up shop in China and admitting defeat?
Well, this raises an important question. And if we look at the absolute financial data, it points to a very different, highly nuanced reality.
Yeah, the Big O Finance report highlighted this phenomenon, calling it the optical illusion of the memory market.
The optical illusion.
Because if you just look at the raw percentages, yes, Samsung and SK Hynix's percentage of revenue coming from China has dropped significantly.
But look at the absolute numbers.
Exactly. If you look at the actual cash flowing in, their export volumes are hitting record highs. South Korea's cumulative semiconductor exports surged 165% to $233.3 billion.
Massive growth.
So their percentage of sales in China only looks smaller because their overall global pie grew so explosively.
Right, the pie got exponentially larger. And the specific reason their overall revenue exploded is because they are dominating the market for high bandwidth memory, or HBM.
Right, the super premium chips needed to run AI processors. Which brings us back to the reality of CXMT's current capabilities.
Yes.
Yes, CXMT is catching up in sheer volume. They are pushing out 300,000 to 350,000 silicon wafers a month, which is nearing Micron's total capacity.
But almost all of that massive capacity is dedicated to commodity memory.
The basic DDR4 and LPDR chips that go into regular PCs, standard smartphones, and everyday electronics.
Right. But when it comes to manufacturing the advanced HBM chips, the specific memory required to run complex AI GPUs like NVIDIA's H100 or H20 CXMT is facing severe fundamental physics hurdles.
SemiAnalysis dug into the manufacturing process for this, and it sounds like a nightmare. Why is HBM so much harder to build than the 3D NAND skyscrapers we just talked about?
Because of thermodynamics. Instead of just stacking cold storage cells like an apartment building, HBM requires stacking high-speed active memory layers right next to a super-hot AI processor.
Heat.
Yeah, imagine stacking 5 scorching hot stove burners on top of each other and trying to run delicate data signals through them at light speed. The heat is immense and has nowhere to escape.
So what happens to the chip?
This causes the ultra-thin silicon layers to physically expand, warp, and literally bend out of shape during manufacturing, breaking the microscopic connections.
Yikes.
SemiAnalysis estimates that because of this thermal stress, CXMT's combined yield for their advanced HBM3 chips is a dismal 25%.
Meaning 3 out of every 4 chips they try to make in that advanced tier literally bake themselves to death and get thrown in the trash.
Exactly. It's highly unprofitable compared to just churning out the older, reliable commodity memory.
Which completely explains why their upcoming IPO filings explicitly state that the newly raised funds will be focused on expanding standard commodity DRAM.
Yeah, they are avoiding near-term HBM expansion entirely.
So if we synthesize this entire global landscape, China is successfully capturing the baseline commodity market by achieving parity in scale and acceptable technology for everyday devices.
Right. But the Korean giants, Samsung and SK Hynix, aren't being wiped out. They are safely retreating upmarket.
To the AI stuff.
Yes. They are dominating the highly profitable AI and HBM stratosphere, leaving the lower margin commodity market behind.
It's a complete bifurcation of the market. The legacy giants take the massive AI premium, and China floods the zone below them with commodity chips.
But because the legacy giants aren't making as many of those standard chips anymore, it creates a massive shortage for regular consumer goods.
Which is exactly why Apple has to go hat in hand to CXMT and pay top dollar. It all perfectly connects.
It is a beautifully constrained ecosystem, heavily influenced by geopolitical maneuvering, but ultimately ruled by the cold, hard mechanics of supply and demand.
Which brings us right back to you, the listener, wondering why your next tech purchase is so expensive. This geopolitical chess match, this AI memory black hole, it directly hits your wallet.
Without a doubt.
Because of these immense supply constraints and the reality that up to 70% of global memory could soon be locked up by AI companies, Jeffries is warning that you should not expect any price relief.
None at all.
For your laptops, your smartphones, your gaming consoles, the prices are going to stay sky high until at least 2028 when new manufacturing capacity finally comes online.
And that 2028 timeline leaves us with a rather profound final thought to consider.
Oh,
Right now, this voracious AI supercycle is masking all the inefficiencies in the market. Demand is so high that prices are soaring across the board, allowing everyone from SKHY down to CXMT to achieve record margins.
Sure, everyone is making money.
But what happens to the global tech ecosystem when the AI supercycle eventually cools down?
Oh, wow.
Imagine a normalized market a few years from now. The AI hyperscalers stop buying up 70% of the supply. But we are left with these massive, incredibly well-funded Chinese megafabs operating at absolute full capacity, churning out hundreds of thousands of wafers a month.
Just flooding the market.
If AI demand drops and those state-backed fabs keep running at full tilt, will we see a historic, unprecedented flood of memory chips that fundamentally crashes the global semiconductor economy?
It's the ultimate boom and bust scenario, and the gears are already in motion. So next time you see that laptop price jump another couple $100, remember, you aren't just paying for a slightly better screen and a faster keyboard.
You're paying a toll.
You're paying the daily toll for an invisible war being waged between AI billionaires, legacy chipmakers, and state-backed megafactories. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the forces shaping the technology in your hands.